Hello and welcome back to Jenna Gets Creative. Today I would like to do a topic that I recently put on my blog back on Friday. If you've been following it and you're watching recently, you may have seen it. I talked about the upset, the issue, the scandal of Patrick Rothfuss's editor who expressed some opinions, statements she maybe wasn't supposed to express on Facebook about 3 months ago. Before I get there, two things. First of all, I knew this would arrive immediately after I finally did a book mail segment on the channel. I've been waiting for this for quite a while. This is Legendborn by Tracy Dion. I arc read this through NetGalley, absolutely adored it. And I heard like 2 months ago at this point that a bookstore in the States, Quail Ridge Books, had signed copies and that they were shipping internationally. And I went and I checked, there were something like 17 signed copies left, and I ordered, and I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and I got an email that they didn't have any signed copies left. Did I want to ship now and receive an unsigned copy, or wait until some undetermined time when they could get Tracy Dion back in the store to sign more? I waited, and it's finally here. As you can see, Tracy Dion finally signed this. This book is amazing. This is Southern Black Girl with Black Girl magic meets the King Arthur legend. This is Bree, and she is going to an accelerated high school, get your high school finished, do college early type program on campus, living on campus at a college in the southern states. She's kind of getting mixed up in two different magical worlds that do have representation on campus. She ends up entangled with this Knights of the Round Table type society. She gets tangled up with those guys because her older student mentor is one of those guys. But then she also finds out through a counselor she's working with on campus that she has this black magic called Not black as in bad, black as in black people, magic called the Root. She's working with both types of magic. And we're gonna have a whole lot of demons showing up on campus. We're gonna have a King Arthur adventure happening on this modern campus. But at the same time, we have this teenage black girl in modern times, and we're seeing the microaggressions towards black people, black girls, black teenagers in modern southern states. We're even seeing the outright racism. We're seeing how she's dealing with it. We've also got recently lost her mother trying to find answers because she doesn't think the police are honest about what happened. It's an amazing book. It is a beautiful cover. I am so happy to have it. This was published on the same day as Paolini's To Sleep in the Sea of Stars, and I had arc read this one first. And I'd already planned a blog post for this one, so that was going up. And then the tour companies I work with scheduled me for way too many on such an important day where I had my own things I wanted to talk about. And this is such an important book, I said, hey, just so everybody knows, I did read this one. I am going to talk about it tomorrow because it deserves its own day. So on September 16th, this was published on the 15th, on the 16th, I made this my star. My blog still has not done better than the day I talked about this book. I knew it would come after I did the mail time. Had to talk about it. By the way, if you are one of my regular viewers or my new viewers and you never saw my videos on my previous book channel, I did talk about these in full. I did my whole review on these guys on that channel. Do you want me to do them again here? Do you want them as the same video like I did then? Do you want separate ones? And like that was a September reviews video, so I also talked about Signy Pike, The Forgotten Kingdom. And I actually hadn't yet read Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson, but that was also the same publication day as these guys and The Forgotten Kingdom. Let me know if you want to see any of those and what format you want to see them in. Their own video, combined video, let me know. Second order of business before we get into today's topic, reminder, tomorrow the Cyborg Tinkerer by Meg LaTorre is coming out. If you haven't pre-ordered it yet and you're watching this on Monday when this video goes out, it may not be too late to pre-order and get in on that pre-sale giveaway. If it's too late, then that means the book is out and you can go get it. I will leave all the information you need to know down below. And if you want to know more about that book, check out last week's video where I did my full review and reacted to my review that I wrote back in the summer. Alright, so on with today's topic. Back in August, the editor assigned to Patrick Rothfuss from DAW, her name is Betsy Wollheim. I'm not sure now if this was just a spontaneous Facebook post or if this was a reply to somebody else. The post has since been deleted, but you know, nothing's deleted on the internet. You can find the conversation on Reddit. She made some comments about whether or not she thinks that Rothfuss even wants to write anymore. If you're not familiar with Patrick Rothfuss, I do have his first 2 full-length novels. I do have most of his other works around here. Here's the novella In the Same World. I've got anthologies with his short stories in them. I've got, down here, you can't see them, they're out of frame. I'm not hauling that out. I've got his Not for Kids stories. This is The Name of the Wind. This came out in 2007, and when this came out, he was being compared to Tolkien for a new generation. This is, by far, one of the best high fantasy novels I have ever read. I love it. The Name of the Wind is book 1 of the Kingkiller Chronicle trilogy. You can probably tell by how beat up my copy is that I've read it many times, despite the fact that it's a beast. This is the sequel. This is The Wise Man's Fear. This came out in 2011. I've also read through it and loved it. Not as much as this one. This one definitely has middle book syndrome. The problem is that this is supposed to be a trilogy, and this was published. We're approaching 10 years ago, because we're at the end of 2020. Apparently, it has been 6 years since Rothfuss has sent a single word of writing, of progress report to his editor at DAW, Betsy Wollheim. She said this. She said that she has not seen a single word of this draft of The Door of Stone, and she's not sure that, she's pretty sure he's not writing at all, not working, and she's not sure if he wants to write anymore. The fans, of course, in this situation have been hounding him forever. When's the next book coming? When's the next book coming? When's the next book coming? He doesn't handle this gracefully at all. And to give a little perspective here, this isn't just like the George R.R. Martin situation where he does take eons to write the next book versus someone like Sanderson who puts out multiple books in the same year, even though they're huge, monstrous books. Rothfuss, when the first book was published in 2007, he said that the rest of the trilogy was already drafted and it was a solid, good draft, and that the books would be out shortly. I believe at some point DAW even said that they were going to release one a year. 2008 was going to be this one, A Wise Man's Fear, 2011, and then 2009 was going to be the third book, The Door of Stone, which we don't have yet, and we're heading into 2021. So we've got that timeline that was blown out of the way. We have the fact that anytime a fan asks Rothfuss, when's book 3 coming out? It doesn't matter if it was kind, it doesn't matter if it was an, oh, by the way, any progress? We'd just like to know, we're curious. Or if it was a, come on man, write the damn book. Because there are those people too. It doesn't matter which one it was. He then goes off on rants about how we're ungrateful, and how we're awful, and how his fans are horrible, and how he doesn't owe anybody anything. He's been known to go off on these rants in the Facebook replies, in his blog replies, on his live streams, and these days, like, he's still doing a lot of live streams, he's still doing a lot of interviews, but he doesn't want to talk about writing, he doesn't want to talk about the book, and he doesn't want the fans to ask that. He wants the fans to fanboy with him over other books and other authors, and he wants the fans to play video games with him. We're not the video game audience, and even if there's a cross-section, there definitely is, with gamers, we're not going to Rothfuss for games. He's the author we're looking at. We're not going to Rothfuss to get the family vlog, which isn't really even a family vlog because he never puts his family on camera, and we don't know the names of his family. We've got this writer who, he's won all the awards. It's an amazing, amazing start to this epic world, this epic story. And he had this promised timeline, which he hasn't fulfilled on. And every time anybody asks him, he goes off on this huge rant about how we're all awful, ungrateful, swear word here, and how he owes us nothing. And then 3 months ago, you get his editor saying, yeah, no, I haven't seen a single word of The Door of Stone, and I don't think he's writing anymore, and I don't know if he wants to write anymore. And again, that post has since been taken down, but nothing's deleted on the internet. You can still find the discussions and the reactions and everything. So that leads into the discussion of, do authors owe their readership anything? And what does Rothfuss owe anybody? Do authors owe their readership anything? Do authors owe their readership a sequel, whether they promised one before or not? Sound off in the comments. I'd love for this to actually be a discussion and not just me talking to my camera. Here's my opinion. No, authors don't owe the readers anything. As readers, we are buying a finished product. We're just the end of the line consumers. We haven't personally financed the writing. We haven't pre-purchased the book before it's even shown to the editor at the publishing house. We aren't owed anything. We can't sue for it if we don't get it. But we are right, I believe, to feel that we, to an extent, deserve that sequel when we have been here being the cheering squad the whole time, and there's no good reason that the author will give us that it's not coming. I do really want that last book, and I understand where everybody else is coming from really wanting that last book, and I understand where everybody else is coming from seeing him working on all of his side projects, trying to be a gamer, putting all that effort into charity, and making excuses and yelling at the fans. I understand being upset by that and wondering if he's even trying anymore and being angry that he's not trying anymore. I understand that because I am too. But does he owe us, the fans, that last book? If he never writes it, have we been cheated out of it in any real way? No. No, we haven't. There's fan fiction. There's our own imaginations. We can come up with the end of Kvothe's story if we have to. What he owes the fans an apology because he has been awful to us. Now he has admitted here and there that he's had a lot of family bereavement trauma and that has affected his mental health. And yeah, as somebody who has mental health struggles and as somebody who is trying to be an author, I do get how that can slow you down and interrupt things, but 9 years on what you claimed 13 years ago was practically finished? No. There's more to it there. And either there's no good reason, or he's not being very forthcoming. And again, he doesn't owe that to us. He doesn't owe us the explanation. If he's not going to give us the explanation that's good enough, that makes us understand, he also needs to stop telling us all that we're horrible and ungrateful. But does he owe anybody anything here? Yeah, I think he owes his editor, his publishing house, I think he owes them something. He owes them communication, just being a decent person and being a professional. But he also probably does actually owe them the manuscript, because undoubtedly they have already paid him quite a bit for this book. The first one blew up, it was a big bestseller. They probably put quite a bit of money down on the table for the second and third book, and he hasn't delivered that third book. Over a decade behind schedule. So yes, if Rothfuss owes anybody that third book, he owes it to his publisher, to his editor. There have been a lot of discussions in the fandom about whether or not someone else should be asked to finish this series, in the vein of how The Wheel of Time was finished by another author. Jordan died before he could finish The Wheel of Time. He had sufficient notes left behind, and his publicist, his editor, somebody was looking for somebody to finish that last book, write the ending to the series, and they approached Brandon Sanderson and asked him to do it. And so the fans have been wondering, like, so if Rothfuss isn't going to finish the Kingkiller Chronicle, who is? And that's an interesting question. I don't think we can answer that. First of all, the fans overwhelmingly want Sanderson. Rothfuss himself, if he was going to will it to anybody, would will it to Butcher. Jim Butcher. I'd love to see somebody like Neil Gaiman finish it. But this is not something that's going to happen while Rothfuss is alive. This is not something that, like, publishers don't just take the rights to that literary world and give it to another author while the original author is still alive. He's around the same age as these other authors, if not younger, so unless he dies tragically early, these other authors we're all looking at are not going to be writing when the time comes. So if he doesn't finish it in his lifetime and the publisher passes it on, it's gonna go to a writer we don't know yet. So we can't answer that question. And would it even happen anyway? Probably not. I can't think of many series out there like The Wheel of Time that were finished by another author after the fact. The only other big thing that comes to mind in the fantasy world would be Tolkien's work. He published The Hobbit, he published his original trilogy, The Lord of the Rings. A lot of the other Middle-earth stuff that has gone out and been published has actually been his son Christopher Tolkien taking all of his notes and all of the backlog of stuff he never published and taking the stories that he told to Christopher, told to his kids, and publishing that. So there's another example in the publishing world, in the fantasy world, of one author's work being finished and put out there by another author. Kind of a different situation. That was his son publishing stuff that was pretty much already done. People also look at George R.R. Martin and how he'll probably finish book 6 in his lifetime. He's getting close. But will he finish A Song of Ice and Fire? Will book 7 come out in his lifetime? Nobody knows. But that one will definitely be finished by another author if Martin doesn't, because Martin has been clear in his communication. He's updated the fans as recently as July on his progress, and he's regularly in communication with his editor. We know that. They've been honest about that. Undoubtedly, he has huge plans in the works, and he has all of this written down somewhere. And if he's not able to finish Song of Ice and Fire, somebody will, and they will be given the tools to do it. Like Jordan passing to Sanderson. The Kingkiller Chronicle probably isn't in that state where somebody could just take what Rothfuss left behind and finish it. Now I know, you're thinking, but wait, didn't you say that it was drafted and it was finished? Well, yes. He claimed that. When the first book, when The Name of the Wind came out in 2007, he did claim that the trilogy was written, practically finished, and it would be out in the next 2 years, one after the other. But then 4 years later, when he published The Wise Man's Fear, and he was being interviewed about that, he admitted that it went through such a revision process. There were characters and scenes and settings added that didn't exist before. Ari, the character that this centers on, didn't exist in the draft that he still had in 2007. There are plenty of fan theories about why The Door of Stone hasn't been written yet, and a lot of them do acknowledge that, the fact that he added so much to The Wise Man's Fear after The Name of the Wind was written and published and put out there in the world. And some people think that maybe the reason The Door of Stone isn't done yet is because he has added so much to it that he's realized that there's no way that this can be just one more book, but it's supposed to be a trilogy. And not only is it supposed to be a trilogy, it's framed as 3 days of storytelling. If you haven't read these books, if you're unfamiliar, this opens with a tavern and inn owner named Coat and his apprentice Bast just going about daily life in a small town, running an inn. A visitor who comes to the inn is Chronicler. He's a famous king's scribe. He's traveling to meet with the king. And he figures out who Koth is. He figures out that Koth is Kvothe. And he wants Kvothe's story. And Kvothe convinces him, you're going to have to stay for at least 3 days. It's going to take me 3 days to tell you my story. We're going to sit for 3 days, day after day, breakfast to bedtime. And I'm going to tell you my story. You're going to write it down. You're not going to ask any questions. You're just going to let me tell my story. And we're going to be interrupted every time I have to go do my inn duties. So that's the framing of this book. That's the framing of the next book. That's supposed to be the framing of the third book. This opens at the beginning of a day at that inn, and it closes at the end of that day. Most of it is his past, telling his story, but you get interludes where they're doing something in the inn, and you're reminded that this is all being told by future Coat in one day. So the theory now is that the Door of Stone is too long to be just one day, and he doesn't know how to handle it, and so he's not handling it. But the fans are going like, this is not a big deal. First of all, the audiobook for this is 23 hours and change, but he's only storytelling for about 17 hours of the day. Probably not even. This one is 44 hours audiobook. Again, breakfast to bedtime. These already don't take place one day each. They already contain too much story. These together have already taken 3 or 4 days realistically, not 2. So he's not breaking anything. He can just have Chronicler ask to stay longer, or Kvothe to say, you know what, this is taking longer than I thought. You're going to need to stay more than 3 days if you want this story. The publishers would probably be excited to have more than one more book coming because it's going to be an instant bestseller, and they stand to make more money off of it. Literally the only person who is concerned and disturbed and distraught by the idea of the Door of Stone turning into more than one more book, if this is the case, this is a theory, is Rothfuss himself. There's also the theory that he doesn't actually know how this ends. He planned this great big world, but like, we start out with young Kvothe with his family. They're a troupe of traveling performers based on the Romani, except they're called the Rue. And his father is starting to sing songs about a group of demons called the Changerin. And the Changerins show up and burn his troop, and he's the lone survivor. Somehow pulls himself up. He's got somebody teaching him magic, and that person convinces him that he should go to the university. He doesn't go straight there. He ends up in Tarbian for a while, just being a street rat. Ends up at the university, and that's like this far into the book. And then the rest of the book is just his trials and tribulations being a poor student at this mythical university, and the plot doesn't really go anywhere. This book, it's more university time, and then he gets expelled, and he goes off and does all these other things in these other parts of the world. He does this learning how to dance with this sword tree, which is basically this giant weeping willow type tree with corn husk razor sharp blades, and you have to learn to move with the wind and dance through the tree, and it doesn't fit. And he goes and he has sex with a fairy, and it's a fascinating world, it's a fascinating character. It doesn't accomplish anything. So that's why people are saying he doesn't know where the story's going, he doesn't actually know how to end it. And he took so much time rewriting this and gutting it and putting it back together and adding characters that he doesn't know where it's going. He doesn't know how to wrap it up in just one more book. Does he owe us that 3rd book? Or can he just leave us with this open-ended duology that didn't actually accomplish much, just opened up a world? Can he leave us with that? Yes, he can. He absolutely can. But he needs to stop being an ass about it. If he's not going to write another word, he needs to be more humble, or he needs to disappear. And I hate to be so frank about that. I say that with the utmost respect and love for him because I love his work and I want to read more of his work and I don't want him to disappear. But if he's not going to write more of this, and if he's not going to turn around and be inspired by something else and just drop this and write something new, if he's just not going to write, he needs to acknowledge that he's not famous for anything else, and nobody's looking to him for anything else, and he's not giving us what we want from him, so he would then need to just back away. I forgot to mention where this has been compared to Martin and how Martin takes forever to put out books in A Song of Ice and Fire. We know Martin has been in communication with his editor. We know Martin has been in communication with his audience. He's put out updates publicly to the fans as recently as July of this year, 2020. Rothfuss put out a photograph of a stack of paper that was the draft manuscript of The Door of Stone. Almost finished. With the beta readers right now. That was in 2013, 7 years ago. That's the last time he has made a comment on the Door of Stone that wasn't a complaint or an attack on the fans. That's probably the last time DOS thought anything about it either. If it was with his beta readers, we should know more about it. What do you think? If you're a fan of Rothfuss and The Name of the Wind, the Kingkiller Chronicle, what do you think of this situation? Are you hopeful we're ever going to get it? I'm not. Are you going to read it if we get it? I will. Do you think he owes us the next book? Do you think any author owes us the next book? In general, I say no. No author owes us their next book, ever. But in cases like this, they probably owe it to the publisher. In the comments down below, discuss. I'd love to make this an actual discussion. Please be kind. Don't just rant. Don't just try to start wars in the comments or anything. I want a genuine, civilized discussion on this. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching. If you're looking for more to watch, I've got some suggestions right up here on the left side of the screen now. Don't forget to like, comment, maybe even subscribe. And if you like living life creatively, whatever that means to you, I'd love to have you along for the ride. Bye guys!